Hey, welcome back, Visions fans. Ready Player Will here with another character review. Today we're looking at Tidus. I wanted to do this review a lot sooner, but I was waiting for really two things in the game. One, I wanted to see the power creep of the X jobs, just how that affected the balance, but also number two, seeing the vision card buffs in terms of what you got for element party buffs. So now that things have kind of settled, I'm super excited to dive into this. Tidus is an absolutely fantastic character overall. Definitely I can see a lot of use for staying power, and has some fun attributes to his kit that you don't get to often see, at least not yet. So, jumping right into it, I'm going to go over the character overview, just some general thoughts, look at his actual statistics, how they fit in the game, class and job overview, and then Esper's vision cards and weapon optimization overall. So, without spending any more time, he's a water unit, so great new addition to that cast. He's really going to make that party shine overall. For jobs, they created the Abe Star player for him, but he's also Paladin and Samurai, different usages overall right there. The weapon, he's a regular sword user with hat, cloth, and accessory as other equips, with a move of 3, jump of 1. In a perfect world, I would have liked to see in a jump of 2, just because, he's a pretty athletic guy and can swim underwater, but jump of 1, you can't make this character too broken. In terms of the weapon resistances, so he's 10% weak to magic, but that's easily fixable. Obviously, I mean, you don't want any negative resist, but that's definitely fixable. There's a lot of way to hedge against that, but starting at 10% and 5% and 10% for the others is a great, jump off point for how you can build resists, and even Pierce being at 0, you can build around that pretty easily. His status ailment resists sleep and confusion, and 10% to, I don't know what that is. I'm blanking. Anyways, not bad resists overall. At least confusion is a really valuable one. So, general thoughts, really versatile, either as a tank or a DPS. People do like to use him as a tank because he does have a source of generating aggro as the Paladin, has a physical barrier, has some evasion where, obviously like evasion is niche in terms of what you're going against, but he's at the top of the chart, so it's definitely, worth mentioning. Huge evasion potential, as we're just talking about, so there are a lot of guaranteed hits, so you got to be really careful about how you encounter them, particularly if you're going to make him your tank player, where he's obviously going to take the brunt of those kinds of guaranteed hits. But if you're using him as like a straight DPS, he definitely could still evade stuff. Like Sakura's pretty blind, and Warrior of Light is okay. Like there's characters that you're going to see that he can evade a lot of stuff with, though. Interesting kit that revolves around critical hits, so I think that's why I'm having a lot of fun looking at him, because there's a bunch that has to do with increasing his critical hit rate and increasing his critical damage, which is a massive, like, underrated overall DPS calculation. Lots of synergies with water units and vision cards. There's just so many ways, like so many parties can put him with to make it work. And fantastic support abilities, believe it or not, where you can't use all of them. I wish you could, but he's got a couple that are really, really valuable to influencing the team fight. So jumping into the stats, please ignore the evasion. This is accuracy. So total accuracy, he's very accurate. 147 is the average. 161 is the, where he ends up being. He doesn't really have any accuracy passives per se, but his stats are strong enough. Like his luck of 246, way above average, where it's 205, and the dexterity, same idea, way above average. So this is going to come in really handy when you talk about critical damage, which we will in a second, or critical rate to proc, I'm sorry. But overall, really accurate character. It's a good thing. In terms of evasion, and again, I have these fucking mixed up, total evasion here, he's top 5. So it's worth mentioning. Are there a lot of sources of guaranteed hit? Yes. Is Yuna one of them? She's super meta? Yes. Does that mean you're never going to dodge hits ever again? No, you are still going to dodge hits. So, the average is 31.7. If you're confused about exactly what these stats mean, I do have an accuracy and evasion video, which I'll post a link to below or above or wherever you can find it. But long story short, if you're making him a pure DPS character where he's not drawing the aggro, you could probably evade a fair amount of like AoE hits in the meantime. So definitely a source of damage mitigation, if you will. And then as it pertains to critical hits, or critical rate, if you will, critical hit rate scales directly off your dexterity. Like literally, the most dexterity in the game means you have the most chance to proc a critical hit in the game. That being said, there are some passive abilities which naturally boost critical rates. Tidus does not have one, if I recall. No, he does. He's got one. So if you give him the critical rate up with passives, he's technically the third highest chance to proc critical hits in the game. Really valuable because his kit completely revolves around that, which we'll get into right now. So he's got you got a score that increases critical rate by 20%, also increases his agility, so really valuable. Not only because agility helps evasion, but obviously helps getting your turn quicker. So, you know, really valuable skill here. Holy Knight's protection is great, increase of defense and HP. Obviously good when you're talking about going against physical units where he's got the barrier in one of his abilities, and now he's got defense. Suncrest is great where it increases critical damage. Me personally, I like this one a lot. To me, trying to boost his critical damage as high as possible is going to be as important, if not more important, than the critical rate, because his stats are already so good. He's not going to have a problem proccing critical hit rate, but when you like pump your resources into the damage output, if you're confused about how that factors into things, I also have a damage calculation video posted below and a link above, hopefully. But yeah, long story short, critical damage, if you add up these little modifiers, you add it to a total modifier. So I'll give you an example in a second. So this increased critical damage of 20, don't forget about it. Finally, Blade Soul is a good one, but it's really if you're going for that evade build and when you're confident that evade is going to be viable. So good, but you know, is more a little more niche to your you know, what you're doing. The counter abilities, Provoke is an interesting one. I don't hate this one, but I think I honestly prefer Paladin's Guard or Third Eye. The problem that I have with the Provoke, so Berserk as a status is dangerous in that, sure, you prevent them from using abilities for 3 turns. They basically just like, you know, hit you over the head for 3 turns. That being said, if you don't kill them in those 3 turns, once they stop being Berserk, they're gonna have a fuck ton of AP accumulated from just normal hits and, you know, not using abilities. So there's like a risk factor, in my opinion, of Provoke, where if you use it, like, you have to kill them rather quickly. Otherwise, they're going to just like come out of the gate with some of the stronger abilities because they've accumulated 3 turns of AP. So it's a good counter ability, to be honest, but really got to be careful where it could hurt you potentially. In terms of the job, there's a lot here, and it's great. So Sphere Shot is absolutely fucking out of this world. So guaranteed chance to hit critical. If you recall, the passive ability on the other page was increased critical damage by 20. Well, long story short, what that means is you add 20% to this 121%, the modifier becomes 141%, and if it's a critical hit, you add another 25% to it. So being able to like increase critical damage will help boost the modifiers on these abilities. And when you talk about something like Sphere Shot, if you could get this up to like 180% modifier on a critical hit for only 10 AP, that is an insanely good ability. Like, that is just so disproportionately valuable for the damage output for the AP, particularly when you consider the range. The other ones, so these next two, Cheer and Hastega, are, you know, the 2 support abilities we're talking about, where it's a source of attack boost, and 40% is really good. Increased defense 15, also really good for your allies. I mean, great source of sustain. And then Hastega, this is the first AoE haste ability in the game, super fucking valuable. It's really just you gotta pick and choose what are you gonna do. Are you gonna use him as a tank, in which case he needs the Paladin sub job and use the physical barrier, or is he gonna be a DPS? And if he's a DPS, are you making him do Cheer or Haste Guy? You gotta like be really selective. And then if is he using a TMR ability or not? So there's a lot of really good things here. It's just you're not gonna be able to always utilize them. In terms of the other skills, so Delay Buster, absolutely awesome. My understanding of this is that it does not rely on faith to proc the status effect of slow. It's whether or not you hit a critical hit. And if you hit the critical hit, then you got a 50% chance to slow the target. So that's really fucking awesome, number one, because it's also important why you want the crit rate up, because if you're going to be using this for the status effect, you obviously want to, you know, nail that critical effect every single time as, you know, guaranteed as you can. Quick hit, absolutely fucking awesome as well. Decrease CT is super valuable in that, you know, he's already got enough agility overall. And I'm sorry, we actually kind of glossed over that. His agility is 67. He's fast as fuck. The average is 60. And if I'm looking at this list, he's second only to Nivlu in terms of speed. He is really fast. So yeah, when you're talking about like CT down and slow and having that speed imbalance, that's a huge other source of like overall increased DPS in the battle, where the more turns you get means the more damage you do. So really valuable. And obviously the quick hit plus, and when you enhance it, it's going to be more potent, so that's super important. And the Jet Shot I like, not super impressive. I mean, defense break of 30 is really good. Nah, it's a good ability. I'll leave it at that. It's just there's multiple sources of defense break in the game, and I think he's offensively strong enough as it is that you don't really need the defense break, but it's certainly, you know, powerful enough. It's nice that he has it in his kit. In terms of the sub job, this one's not bad either. So Sleep Buster, same idea here, where you can have a 50% chance to sleep. Really depends on what you're trying to do to the enemy. And then Spiral Cut is it's good in that it increases critical damage by 30, so super, super potent. It will move him to the target panel, so it's nice for mobility. It's really just a question of, you know, do you want to use this instead of the Paladin or the Samurai sub-job, which you can answer that in a second. So the Paladin sub-job, really, Saintly Wall is an absolute guaranteed yes, and then Taunting Blade, the same idea. You're probably going to want to, you know, if you're using the Paladin job, I mean, you obviously could do Sentinel as well, but it's, you know, going to kill his evasion rate. This is a good class overall. You just got to pick how you want to use it. And then the Samurai sub-job, kind of the same idea. This is really more if you are going for that like pure evasion where you're going to want the illusion here ability. But other than that, you know, Hien is a nice like cheap ability, but he doesn't really need it because Sphere Shot is already so cheap. So this is a good ability. Devotion helps a lot with the increase of critical rate and the increased attack of 30%. So there's some builds you can play with here. Again, one of my points on the general thoughts was he's got versatility as both a tank or a pure DPS. So a lot of different ways to really build him out. In terms of the limit break, nothing too special here. It's just that it's a quad hit, which is pretty great just for the sake of chaining. And when you're talking about like water comps, you know, that obviously gives you a lot of potential to do a fuck ton of damage when you're chaining water abilities. And 43 AP is relatively cheap overall. Damage output 205% if you max it is pretty average for a limit break. So not a bad limit break. It's just a smidge more situational for how it gets its full benefit. And the TMR, I actually really love this TMR. So for an accessory, positively great in terms of the HP and the defense of 7, agility of 5. So this is going to make him way faster than he already is, or other characters if you decide to use it. Increase the critical rate as well. So, you know, you may not need to use the passive ability for the increase of critical rate. You can just use this, you know, an external accessory. And then the TMR skill, again, if you're really going all in on Tidus, might as well go all in and invest in this TMR. The critical rate, buff it by 30% is enormous, and the increase of critical damage of 30 for the 3 turns, also enormous. So when you start stacking up all these like critical damage ups, you're talking about getting a fuck ton of more damage done at really no extra AP expenditure. So that's the really valuable part about his DPS output. And master ability, increased defense penetration of 20. It's really great against other physical comps. Obviously, when you're running into a magic meta, you don't get the full benefit of that per se, but it still has a place of you know, being a really hard-hitting physical character against strong tankier units. Looking at the vision card synergies, so Suteki Dane came out this week, and it's really, really awesome for him. This is probably the best card overall. So the dexterity of 40, remember, critical hit rate scales directly off of dexterity. So giving this card is going to jack up his crit rate all by itself, and then increase attack of 30%. This is water only. Increase slash attack of 35. He's only slash. Increase crit rate of 13. So not only is the dexterity going to buff his crit rate, but it's fucking on the card to buff it. And then for not only him but the party, and then increase HP of 25%. So also making him and teammates more bulky. Really, really fantastic card if you're using Tidus and a water comp in general. Next one, Leviathan. So he actually, his class is eligible for all of this: the unit effects, the ability, the party effects. So this is, you know, he has 0 pierce, innate resistance. So if you are going against pierce comps, you know, this is going to give him that 20%, but it's also going to increase HP, attack, slash attack, and it's going to give him more survivability because the water buff, if you will, is increased area resist of 20%. So that's super helpful, and extra 4 defense, every little bit helps. Clairvoyant Astrologer, also a good one. So he doesn't benefit from the unit effect at all, but the water ability in this card, increased magic resist of 20%. Again, he's weak to it 10%, so this is going to put him positive, but it's also going to give him 4 SPR, and it's going to give him attack buff of 35% and acquired AP of 35%. So you can just, you know, spam the fuck out of abilities. Same thing with your teammates. So great card overall. And then dashing over Snowy Field. So this is obviously not optimized for him, but that being said, oh, I haven't listed twice. Increase agility 5%. He's already fast as hell, so it's just going to make him better at that. But more than anything, you're looking at the crit damage here of 25. So sure, pierce attack 35 really doesn't do anything for him. Obviously, you want to use this card like on Glaciella, ideally, you know, and let him benefit from the party effect. But crit damage of 25 on a card like this could significantly bump him up to like even a higher tier of damage output. Is it the best card for him? Definitely not. But it's worth mentioning because what the card does in terms of like agility buff and crit damage up is certainly going to make him really impressive. And then there's his card, which has, you know, him listed on it. It's a good card. It's just, it's niche to like making him an evade unit or being anti-missile, which kind of doesn't make sense in my opinion, because if you're going against, you know, gunner comps, a lot of them have some sources of guaranteed hit, so the evasion is kind of null and void. That being said, you can really use it for either. It doesn't have to be at the same time. But this card, it's a good card. It's just not the best card, but it's worth mentioning, so I have it here. Other than that, there are a bunch of other cards that are obviously good for him. You know, if you want to go Fenrir for the magic resist of 20% instead of going for the astrologer, you know, who knows what you have access to for vision cards. So there's a bunch of others that are really good. These are just some of the ones that really stick out, and I wanted to talk about them because you don't get to always see them mentioned in a lot of these reviews. They're kind of unique in that sense. So the Esper Synergies, also kind of straightforward. Leviathan's my favorite so far because he is so fast that the agility penalty of really only 13, being on the slower side of the spectrum, isn't going to hurt him a ton, but it's going to jack up his water attack by 25, and then just obviously, like, stat-wise, it's a good card. 880 HP, 91 attack. It's good for what he wants to do. Odin, kind of the same idea. I would say like a little bit, not worse, but like it's really for the the agility tuning here. We're gonna get 6 extra agility because really, you know, the slash attack of or let's say the human killer of 25, that's basically the water attack of 25, so it kind of offsets, and it's really just more about if you want to build slash resist or missile resist. So yeah, if Tidus is going against a missile comp, like, give him Odin, because you're going to get the same offensive output, but it's going to be a faster Esper, and you're going to be able to build in those resists, so great choice for that as well. Golem, same idea in terms of if you're building resist, so if you want his defense way up or pierce resist, you can essentially take the penalty of only 10 agility because he's so fast that he's not going to really miss, you know, the extra 3 to 6 that you see here, but it's going to bulk him up significantly, and you can still keep the human killer on there if you want to, you know, have some offensive output. And then Death Machine, kind of the same idea. If you're going against missile comps, and he seems to be particularly strong against them, it's going to give you defense and missile resist, and the 12 agility isn't a huge penalty because he's so fast. And then finally, Aegon, surprise, surprise, it's like the Esper on every single review I do. Magic resist, pierce resist, slash attack, agility 14, you know, just well-rounded stats overall. It's certainly a viable Esper for him also. So you have a great selection of things to choose from. Really just depends on what you're trying to gear against and how you're using him in terms of more of a tanky character, you know, where he is going to be like the tank. So sure, give him Golem or Death Machine, or is going to be more of like a DPS. You want to give him Leviathan or Odin. Weapon optimization, super straightforward. It's really two. Brotherhood was released this week. And Ragnarok, that's really what it is. So yes, Ragnarok technically has a little bit more attack stat here, but Brotherhood is nice. It's essentially the modifier is equal because he's a water unit, so you have an extra modifier of, let's say, 16 compared to the slash attack of 15. And although yes, the assault has, you know, 8 more attack on it, you get an extra 8 accuracy and an extra 16% to critical rate. So the crit rate up is really the benefit of the Brotherhood, where, you know, you're kind of sacrificing a little bit of the attack stat for a higher chance to get a critical hit, which means more damage, or at least close to the damage on average. So Brotherhood's probably the best thing you can put on them, particularly because I think you get it for free as part of the board. So that's Tidus in a nutshell. Again, super interesting character in terms of how he revolves around, like, his critical rate up, critical damage, whether he's a DPS, whether he's a tank, what he does for water synergy, because you saw like a bunch of those cards have some really interesting like water party effects. And yeah, because you have a great water healer in Eldyra, you have a potential water tank if you didn't want him to do it in Miranda. Glaciella brings like a other type of DPS to the battle as a pierce unit. So there's a ton of variety. Winter, oh god, I forget her name, but I'm gonna put it on the screen. Winter Ramada, that's who it is. Winter Ramada, like another great evasion slash unit that synergizes really well. There's a bunch of things that can pair with them. It's just a matter of, you know, how do you want to do it, which is a great question for theory crafters. So, you know, if you're building him up, I hope you've enjoyed playing with him so far. He's a really fun unit, and good luck to all of you in terms of getting the resources to build him up to the maximum he can be in the X job, as well as building up Suteki Dane if you're going for that vision card. So thanks again for watching. You know, again, any corrections, criticisms, things you want to see, feel free to drop in the comments, and if not, good luck polling, happy anniversary, and I look forward to doing more content for y'all soon.